Which is your favourite trophy and from which circuit did you win it?
Oh dear. Probably the funniest one I've got, which is probably my favourite in a funny way. It's actually when I won Le Mans in 1991. And the trophies that you get were about that big. They're about to winning. My one is that big because I got a sort of reproduction of the winning trophy because they all took it back to Japan. So I've got this little tiny, this is 24 on top of it, a little bit of marble, and then underneath it's got first, but then it's all in Japanese. So I've never got the original trophy. So it's the funny one, because the trophy also says that big, mine's that big.
Okay.
It's funny.
Which is your favourite circuit to race at?
It is Spa in Belgium, but it's the old Spa because I'm one of these, I don't like this extra runoff area that we have, because if you make a human error, nowadays you can just run off in this extra runoff area and just drive back on again with no penalty. When I started racing, there was the track, little bit of grass, and gravel track. So you knew the limit was if you was getting onto the green stuff, you were going to be in serious trouble. So you then judged it, when now the judgment has almost sort of disappeared. So if I brake too late, it's like, it doesn't matter, because I can just run back off again. And Spa has some of those areas now where there's that extra bit of tarmac that's there that the drivers sort of use sort of too much in some ways. They don't get penalised for making a mistake.
Yeah.
So Spa overall still has the ingredients of being a very exciting track to drive.
Okay. Which F1 car was the best to drive, best to race in?
Yeah. Probably the 92 107, as it was called, Lotus, because we still had big fat tyres and the wings were quite big and wide at the same time. The suspension was very wide as well, and you could be very, very aggressive driving the car. So when you went into a corner, you sort of do all, when we had stick shifts, you sort of do all the changing, and when you went into the corner, you just turned it, and then it gripped, and then it just went straight around the corner. And then in the mid-90s, you had to be very careful, and you couldn't be aggressive because there wasn't much grip, because they put grooves in the tyres, which they don't have nowadays. So probably that early era, the early 90s, because they were men's cars.
Okay. Who was your favourite teammate?
Again, probably Lotus and probably Sauer, actually, the Swiss team, because everybody sort of thinks the Swiss are sort of a little bit sort of odd and haven't got much humour, but the Sauer team have got a really very good humour. They were really fun to be with. And teammates, probably the best one I had, as far as the competition that we had together, was probably with Ackman, actually, because we got on really well, but we had a very good battle together, and that pushed us actually both of us, and it was really enjoyable driving.
Okay. What was Adrian like as a boss?
Good. Really, really interesting, because he always had a plan of what he wanted to do, but he also had a plan of how he was going to go about achieving that as well. Because I joined in when we were doing Formula 3 and Formula 3000, which is like GP2 nowadays. So that's before he got to Formula 1. But he was very much, he's a bit like a car salesman, he's a wheeler dealer. And he always sort of tried to make the deals work, which one gave him the money to go out there to choose the driver that he needed for them to actually go on the track and actually win championships. And I was very lucky that when I joined him in Formula 3, that was exactly that. He had most of the budget. He was able to choose me. We won the championship, and that moved him on to Formula 3000 with me. And then he won the championship the next year with Jean Alessi, for example. And then he got to Formula 1 in 91 as well. So tough, but fair. Very good host at the same time. So tough, but good guy.
Okay. How did you recover from your accident, and how did you come back so strong?
It was just more of a mental thing, because although the damage I had to my feet was quite bad, I still had two options. One was to go away and then sort of do some racing in Japan or somewhere, and then after 2 years come back and say, here I am, I'm back again. Or the other one was to work really, really hard straight away to get back into racing as soon as I could, which was within about 5 months, I think it was, when I had the accident, to when I did my first Grand Prix in Brazil. And I'm glad I did that, because my first Grand Prix probably saved my career in many regards, because I finished 4th. I wasn't really walking, I was really, I think for that race I didn't have my sticks. I was not allowed to take my sticks with me, so I went really hard. And I wasn't really walking very much, but because I finished 4th, everybody remembers, even today, that race that I did in Brazil. If I'd gone away, and I'd come back, and as I said to you, I'd come back and said, here I am again. I think people would have gone, where's he been? How's his feet? What's happened? And the problem is as well, with Formula 1, it changes so much that the next generation would have been coming along, and I would have been forgotten about. So I honestly believe I wouldn't have had a career if I hadn't worked very, very hard to get back and do that race in Rio in 1890.
Okay. What was it like racing the semi-cross and mounted?
Brilliant, because it was a very, very different time compared to now. The cars were quite, as I said, you could drive them very aggressively, which Ayrton and Nigel especially were able to really get the best out of the car. Alain was more of not the qualifier, but he was the race driver. He was able to look after the gearbox, he was able to look after the engine, and he was able to look after the tyres. And I think that's where winning 4 championships for Alain, because he was able to look after things, and especially the tyres as well, which we have the same situation today with the Pirelli tyres. And it's the guys that have the best feel. Alain had a very good feel, as did Ed and Nigel, but it was very competitive back then. I think the first time where there was I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 drivers that were competitive, and if they were in the right car, they could have won races, and I think that was the first time we sort of saw that. And things changed just because of the experiences that Ayrton brought into fitness levels. For example, I think he was James Stewart the first, and I think sort of Alain Prost there the same with the next, and then Michael Schumacher sort of was the next one. And today, the next generation, or the new generations, will be Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. They're the new benchmark of drivers today.
Okay. How did someone's death affect you, and how did you deal with it?
It didn't affect me in a way. It's like, I want to stop racing, I don't want to do it again. Because Ayrton, like me, had a belief. He was protected by God, his religion. So that was a slightly different issue. But he, like me, had this thing that motorsport's dangerous. There is a chance that you could get sort of badly injured. I had it before I got to Formula 1, so I was sort of aware of it. But as a driver, you don't think about that. There's no risk that you're taking, and you're willing to risk driving on a Formula 1 car at a Grand Prix. And Ayrton had that sort of mindset. So when it did happen, it was very sad. It was very uncomfortable, because it was Ayrton Senna, who to me was my sort of idol in many regards. But I think we sort of both knew, and probably all of us on the field knew, that danger was there. And I know if it happened to me, I wouldn't want Ayrton or everybody else to stop racing just because, unfortunately, I got killed. I would have wanted them to carry on and have the fun that they were having before the incident, and then the fun they would actually have afterwards. And I think Ayrton was the same. He knew there was a risk, and he wouldn't want people to stop racing just because he unfortunately lost his life. So it didn't affect me in a big way. I think it just sort of made you aware that those dangers were there, but you don't think about it. You don't think about it could be me. You always think, actually, it won't be me. And that's what I think Ayrton was always thinking. He was going to be protected, as I said, by his religion.
Okay. How many times have you won Le Mans?
Just the once. Back in 1991 with the Mazda, which is still is the only Japanese manufacturer to win Le Mans. And we actually used a wanker engine, which is a rotary engine. It's the only sort of, I think, almost maybe the only non-piston engine, because that's they're rotated, they're like blades that sort of triangle and actually spin on each other. I'm not sure how it works, don't ask me that question. but it was different. No, the RX-7 and RX-8, it's the same engine, which has a wanker engine. So it's a very different thing, and it's nice, as I said, because it is the only Japanese to win Le Mans. Le Mans starting as we're speaking, and Toyota racing against Audi, and we're going to have to wait and see if they can actually triumph. But Nissan have tried before, Toyota have tried before, and they've been able to do it. It's only a small Mazda 2 that I was lucky to be with back in 91.
Okay. Did you enjoy driving a BTCC?
Do you want an honest answer?
Yeah.
Do you want an honest answer?
Yeah. I couldn't work out front wheel drive. Everything I've done, from karting to Formula 4 to Formula 3, to Formula 3000 to Formula 1 to sports cars, has always been rear wheel drive, which is completely illogical. Front wheel drive, whoever designed front wheel drive should be shot. He's probably not with us anymore, because I think it's been around for a long time. But to drive on, it was just such a different way of driving. Of course, all my years of doing all my rear wheel drive driving was very hard to then twist around and actually then go front wheel drive. People like Jason and Matt Neal, for example, they've done it for 25 years or so, especially Matt. So from that point of view, they've got so much more experience. And I think I did my first race, we did one test, and I think it was 6 races. I did three actual races, but we had 3 races within the weekend. So no, enjoy it, sadly. Which out of all the different types of cars had driven was your favourite?
Formula 1 stands out. It's out 1,000% above everything else, because they have 900 horsepower. They have so much downforce. They can drive on a roof upside down on a ceiling, stuck to it, stick down to it. So the grip they have on the ground is fantastic. And then the challenge of getting it around the circuit as fast as you can. And secondly, driving against the world's best drivers as well. So it's Formula 1 by a long way, just because the car is the ultimate. It's the ultimate experience I've ever felt, even compared to sports cars, but definitely touring car.
What car do you use on the road, and have you got a collection at home?
No, I haven't. At the moment, I'm driving a BMW Z4. I'm not really into my cars. I don't. If you've got a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Porsche, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't use the damn thing. It sounds good, it looks good, but you can't use it. So I'd rather, the best thing I've ever had is a Army Land Rover 90, because I could thrash it to death. But I'd always be within the speed limit wherever I was, because I think the maximum you did on a motorway was about 75, and then I'd actually thrash around a roundabout. I was only doing about 30. But I was driving it. But if it's a Porsche, I can't drive it because I'll be over 30 or over 70 on the motorway anyway. So I'd rather have something, I thrash it to death, I drive the hell out of it, but I'm not speeding. That's actually more fun.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it. Nice question.